But I really don't have any regrets. I really don't. I've lived exactly how I've wanted to. I've tried my hardest every single time. I didn't win the matches that maybe I should have always won, but I really gave it my all. So that for me is enough.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the Body Serve. I'm Jonathan.
And I'm James.
This is our mid-Wimbledon recap episode entitled Nowhere to Hide. And why do we call it that?
Remind me? No. Well, the seeds on day one had nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Mm-hmm. You know, it's a song.
Correct.
Novak Djokovic is not finding any place to hide from these Gimelstob questions that keep coming up. The ATP Players Council imploded on Friday. Very shortly after we recorded, I was kind of annoyed that this that all this news happened right after we recorded.
Well, I mean, it gave us something to talk about on this episode. Turns out they had somewhere to run because half the board left.
Basically.
Half the council.
Yeah. It's not an exaggeration to say a lot of stuff has happened in the first week of Wimbledon. It has been an absolutely wild week. And we probably say that a lot, but this time it's for real.
I can't recall the last time a Grand Slam has had as many interesting press conferences. And I think part of that, and kudos to Wimbledon, is how well, or I should say, how easily they've made those videos accessible to the public to watch.
Yes. So probably annoying to journalists who are trying to use their quotes in stories, but great for fans and great for the public because they're on YouTube now, they're on the app. Wimbledon, we were talking, has the best app at this point of all the Grand Slams.
Not even close. Mm-hmm. The first thing that we'll start with is the seed carnage.
Day one and day two, round one. It was interesting because it fell pretty clearly along like next gen versus the old guard. And all the old folks, the senior citizens, Serena, Roger, Rafa, Djokovic, with the exception of Venus, made it through. And a bunch of these young guns were out. Naomi Osaka lasted, a few hours in the tournament on day one. Alexander Zverev losing to Yuri Vesely, which we really should have called as a tricky match for him. Stefanos Tsitsipas losing to Fabiano. Sabalenka out to Rybarikova, who made the semifinals here, I think, in 2016, taking out Coco Gauff when she was like a serious heavy hitter.
If you recall, Rybarikova was inducted to the Body Serve Hall of Fame, a fact that I had forgotten until somebody reminded me this week.
Yes, and now I almost feel bad about it because Van de Wey has been injured for a long time now, and she's been out of the game for quite a bit.
There's no cause and effect between that. We did not cause those injuries. At the time, the induction was warranted.
Right. I'm just, now it's like I'm not going to celebrate that now. That was then.
Okay.
Right?
And you're trying to sleep better at night. I get that. But deal with it.
Right. Dominic Thiem lost to none other than Sam Querrey, who, as we said, beat Novak Djokovic in 2016, is always going to be dangerous on grass, but it was so unclear where he was at. He too had been out of the game for quite a long time, but he's back and into the round of 16. Garbiñe Muguruza. Now this was a head scratcher. Beatriz Haddad Maia beat her in the first round, and every time Muguruza loses now, it's, when are you going to change your coach? Is the coach a problem?
Well, Haddad Maia is no slouch.
Right.
I don't think for folks who follow tennis intently, I don't think they were terribly shocked by it, but I can see how the name recognition just isn't there for Haddad Maia, but that was always going to be a tough one for Muguruza.
And we know on the WTA, there are very few easy first-round matches anymore. Actually, Muguruza faced her in the first round in Cincinnati the year she won. I remember that randomly. And Garbiñe beat her very easily. But Muguruza is not very far removed from winning Wimbledon, only 2 years ago. And this quarter of death that we were talking about that had the potential to implode has not imploded, but it looks quite a bit easier than it did at the outset. Because the other big loss was Angelique Kerber, the defending champion, and that, amidst all the chaos of week one, that sort of slipped by. It was noticed, but it wasn't dwelled upon.
Well, amidst the rubble, there's so much going on, so many seeds falling that it was less notable for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about it before. People don't rate Kerber. They don't.
They really don't.
Did you hear? I forget who the commentator was. Who was this clip was making it.
Well, I don't want to say because I'm not totally sure who it was.
This clip was making the rounds where the commentator essentially eviscerated her game, saying that she has all these holes and these are all of them. These are the 10 holes in Kerber's game.
She's like, she doesn't have a volley, she doesn't have an overhead, yet she still won 3 majors. It's like, okay. In this day and age, you don't have to have every single piece of your game firing at elite level. You don't. Let's not even get into the ATP in the 90s when you needed a serve and forehand, period. Those days are gone. But Angelique Kerber is a very, very good player. I thought that was a little harsh.
Some would say great.
Mm-hmm. Some, yeah.
She's a Hall of Fame player at this point. And the thing about Kerber that ticks me off when I see people going after her is the bottom line is she's a 3-time slam champion. And in 2 of those slam finals, she beat the GOAT.
Right.
Like, you cannot, under any circumstance, take that away from her. I've seen pressed fans say that Serena has handed all these slams to all these girls, and she's made all these players unnecessarily when she didn't have to. She just gave away trophies.
But it's so unfair, because we have seen players come out against Serena in Grand Slam finals and not play their game. Just be totally cowed by the situation.
It's totally disingenuous because we also saw the level that Kerber brought to those 2 finals.
Yes. She didn't, it wasn't accidental.
No. The Wimbledon final last year, Serena absolutely did not bring her game.
Correct.
I don't think you could make that argument in the 2016 Australian Open final. Mm-hmm. Serena may not have played her best in that final, but she was there.
Yes. That Australian Open and US Open, no asterisks on any of the 3. But especially in 2016, she earned those titles. She lost to Lauren Davis, who, honestly, the last I heard of Lauren Davis, she was very nearly beating Simona Halep in the 2018 Australian Open. Remember that long match?
Yes.
Wozniacki almost lost to Fett that year early. Simona played a 15-13 third set against Lauren Davis in 2018. Simona went on to be the runner-up to Caroline. And that match kind of messed up Lauren's career for a little while. She really struggled for the next year and a half-ish.
That match was the reason.
It may not... Okay, so correlation is not causation,
You were
right?
struggling with that today.
After that match, she has been playing a mix of WTA events. She's played challengers. She's played ITFs. Her ranking plummeted for a little while. But she played really, really well against Kerber and exploited the weaknesses. The passiveness that you see against Angelique when she's not feeling super confident.
Any other big-time upsets you want to talk about?
Well, there's the one that I don't want to talk about, which is Venus Williams. The match that everybody was looking at, Venus Williams, Coco Gauff.
I see the transition you did here. This is a very good
I'm
segue.
working on it. Yeah. Unlike that DJ last night at the club we were at, there were some perplexing segues between songs, were there not?
Were there segues, or were they just playing entire songs?
There were meant to be.
Oh.
Anyway.
Let me tell you, we went to another club, and one of the drag queens did this impeccable mashup of Lil' Kim and Mariah's A No No. That was spectacular.
And then, when the Kim song dropped out, they mashed up the chorus of A No No and No Scrubs. And it was like, okay, how had I not figured this out before?
I had.
That these songs could be transposed. Oh, you had.
I had, yes.
An even better fix to me than Ed Sheeran's song, which he had to give Candy Burris songwriting credit on.
Oh my God.
Get your money, girl. Get it.
Venus Williams lost to Coco Gauff 6-4, 6-4 in the first round of Wimbledon. And Venus, in that post-match press conference, you could tell she was devastated. It wasn't a defiant Venus in press that you've seen at times, not wanting to answer questions. It was a Venus who was struggling to get through her emotions, I thought.
Really?
While maintain her steeliness.
The match itself, Coco impressed from the jump.
Here comes your butt.
No, there's no but. A lot of people like to compare Venus and Coco. There is sort of a resemblance just by looking at them, right? But I don't think their games are all that similar.
No.
I see people have said maybe the physicality, like the way that they look when they're playing, and I can see that. But Coco plays with so much topspin, right?
Yeah.
Like she plays with a lot more loop and spin. And Venus just hits flat as hell during that match. And because it was so flat, things were going into the net or going over the lines. Like, she was just really inconsistent from the ground, unfortunately.
I have a more charitable take of that match toward Venus than damn near everybody I've seen. I don't think anybody gave Coco enough credit for that win.
Okay.
She got credit for actually winning the match, and it gets wrapped up in this narrative of the passing of the baton,
Yeah, the changing of the guard.
which is not, and then there's the whole "I made you in a good way." Like, this is the legacy of the Williams sisters, right?
Right.
Which is far more pleasing to watch and participate in than some trite old narrative. Because we still do not know the full extent of what their legacy is within tennis. We're starting to see it more.
Right.
It sucks that this iteration of their legacy has taken Venus out of the tournament. But
It's just crazy that they're here
Yeah.
to witness it.
it's possible in 10 years we could have 10 black women in the top 50 for the United States. It's possible. But when I say that I don't think Coco got enough credit, I don't think her actual game, the game that she played against Venus, got enough credit.
Okay.
People were talking about how Venus didn't play well, but I've always maintained that whenever a top player does not play well, it necessarily has to do with what's on the other side of the court. And part of that for me was Venus is not used to playing Coco. They never played before. You look at some of the balls that Coco hit off of her forehand, the incredible depth and spin that she got on her forehand side. Venus was shocked.
Yeah.
And then there were times as well where she had mishits that went in that shocked her as well. She couldn't get any rhythm. Venus needs rhythm to be playing well from the baseline, and Coco was hitting slices, giving her different sight levels on her ground strokes. So she couldn't find one zone to hit through the ball. And on top of that, her serve was impregnable. That a 15-year-old can serve like that is outrageous.
Yeah. And you saw that through qualifying. Her serve stats were excellent. She can hit some double faults. Like those are in there. But her first serve percentage, like points won on first serve, was crazy throughout qualifying.
And on top of that, she was not missing anything. I don't even think she had double-digit unforced errors against Venus in that first round match.
Her error count in the first two matches was extremely low.
So if you're going to be serving that well, not making any errors, and you're a new opponent for somebody, you're seeing them for the first time, and you're on grass, there's very little time and a very small window for you to make adjustments to turn the Titanic back around.
Who was that again?
Amy Grant.
Okay.
And Venus ran out of time. That's what happened. She saved a few match points. Perhaps if she had gotten into a third set, she might have been able to figure that out a bit more. But full credit to Coco Gauff for winning that match. And then to think that she then took out Rybarikova in the second round, playing even better.
Yeah.
Wild. And what we're seeing with Coco is an explosion of exposure for her with this tournament. I don't think I can recall a young player getting this much press for winning 3 matches.
Mainstream press.
Yeah, for winning 3 matches, really. And I've had so many people come up to me and ask me about Coco Gauff.
Really?
Yeah. I hear people talking about her all the time. She's on the TV and people are just watching out of curiosity.
Yeah. I mean, they put her match against Herzog on center court. 2 unseeded players, one of them a qualifier.
And in that third round match against Herzog, she looks like she's going down pretty easily. She's down 6-3, 5-2, ends up saving 2 match points, comes back to win the second set in a tiebreak, and then wins 7-5 in the third. To be able to do that after what she had already done earlier in the week, it's incredible.
Yeah, that match against Herzog was a slice fest. So many backhand slices, Coco hitting forehand slices, moon balls, like anything to stay in points. She just handled grass court tennis so well. You're going to get bad bounces on slices. One of those match points that she saved, she hit like this backhand slice that was really close to the line and sort of spun out of the court. Just like, oh, all right, girl, you do that. Because an inch to the left, the match would have been over. And you talk about this a lot. It's a perfect illustration of when you generate all this confidence by winning easily in qualifying, you can port that into the main draw. And she's definitely done that. I mean, imagine the confidence you gain beating the 5-time champ in the first round.
I say this a lot. You mean with respect to taking qualifiers for granted in the first round.
And say, like, don't underestimate qualifying because they have their
momentum.
Exactly.
We do want to caution overhyping Coco. She's still only 15. She's still limited to the number of tournaments that she can play. Her ranking is still, as it is now, as it stands, I think she's just outside the top 150. She's got Simona Halep next. It's not wise to have expectations of her now to be going deep into main draw events, into regular tournaments.
Right.
Like if she were to leave this and go play a challenger at her next event and lose in the first round, that wouldn't be surprising.
Yeah, so there's this age eligibility rule in the WTA rulebook, which I'm sure you've heard about. As a 15-year-old, like in the year that you're age 15, you can play 10 WTA tournaments, which includes like WTA main draw tournaments or qualifying for tournaments or ITF events that award WTA points. Per Brett Haber from Tennis Channel, he said she's used all of her wildcards, which is 3, and she can now play in 7 more WTA tournaments for not the year, until March actually, because her 16th birthday is in March. So the eligibility rule goes up. She can play a few more tournaments the following year. But it's a way, women's tennis especially has been plagued by young prodigies who burn out, who are pushed by sometimes abusive tennis parents. That's not a problem here, but there are safeguards in effect for a reason. Because it is really child labor. Like, they're kids.
One of the most absurd things I saw all week was this discussion about whether or not this rule needs to be revisited. Like, I don't understand. Why? Why should it be revisited? It makes perfect sense, and we have a long history of examples as to why this rule was implemented in the first place.
Right.
The fact that Coco may have well-adjusted parents or supportive parents or parents who appear to be doing things the right way, whatever that is, does not mean now that there aren't 10 other parents who are doing it the wrong way.
Right. These are still children. 15 is very young. I don't know if you remember when you were 15, but...
I had braces.
But for a 15-year-old to go out on center court and compete as a professional in her field, it's crazy. But what's even crazier is to expect a 15-year-old to compete consistently on the world stage throughout the year.
They're Grand Slam champions who can't compete consistently on a week-to-week basis. And I really do hope that the hype does not impede her progress. Because on top of all this that's been happening, she's right in the middle of this celebrity whirlwind of praise.
Oh my...
It's crazy.
Amazing.
The Beyonce's mother? Miss Tina Knowles.
Tina? The mother of 2 queens, as Coco said. Michelle Obama, Kamala Harris, Joel Embiid was one of the first ones.
Yeah, big shock. that NBA players are out here supporting
Right.
women's sport, right?
I know.
Like this
Just to make the ATP look bad.
No, this is entirely on brand. It's a totally different culture in the NBA.
Yeah. Reese Witherspoon, but the one she was most excited about, Jaden Smith. Jaden Smith has stans, apparently. Because she is like a full-on stan.
Yeah, she has 9 hoodies.
Hype. Bruh.
9 hoodies. One of the
9
best things
what?
9 Jaden Smith hoodies. The one of the best things that you'll see, maybe even all year, is Coco's her live Insta feed after Jaden Smith had tweeted at her.
Bro, Jaden Smith posted me.
At Jaden Smith.
That, I think a lot of us felt the same way. Watching her made us feel very old and reminded us that she is a teenager. She's very much a kid.
It put into perfect relief her actual age. You know, and let's not get carried away with this. Like, she is having a great time. She's enjoying the hell out of it, as she should. But we need to not impose more on her than she's already going to be having to deal with by default, owing to her success.
Coco, it was really the biggest story of week 1. And I don't want to harp on it too much, but the Williams legacy is real. And I don't know, Serena and Venus have both been asked about her in press. Serena said she feels very proud of what Coco's doing. And they have to have some sense of what their role is in the whole thing. But they're still out there competing against people who are inspired by them. So that creates a distance. But Tamani Carayol wrote something about how Coco Gauff's confidence is allowed to exist because things that Venus Williams had to go through. Like that really struck me. Because you think back to that interview with Venus, and this white male older interviewer was really prodding her. As a kid, she was like 15 years old. Said, "Why are you so confident?" And Richard Williams stopped the interview. And for a lot of people, for a lot of white people, they probably didn't understand what was going on. But Coco we need to allow her to have that space. And I feel, I don't need to protect her, but she needs to be protected. Because there are people out there who are saying, why? She should be more humble.
We did see that.
Yes.
Trash.
So, Nadal-Kyrgios.
The most hyped match of the first week. A second round match. We talked about we talked in our preview episode as the I-90 thudded through our audio.
Deep apologies about that.
We talked about how Kyrgios, should he get through his first round match, which he almost didn't, winning in 5 sets, would be up to the task to play Nadal in the second round. And we got a great match.
Yeah, I think it was a very good match. I don't know if it was great.
For a second round match, it was a great match.
Well, okay? Indeed, but the matchup, no matter where it happens, is going to be a big deal. For some reason, I know the reason. Kyrgios doesn't like Nadal. Rafa doesn't like Nick either. Uncle Tony has run his mouth a few times about Nick. There have been some bad translations because Uncle Tony used the word maleducado, which means something different in Spanish, and actually the same word exists in Italian, and it doesn't actually mean anything having to do with education. It's more like about manners. So like disrespectful. That's what he meant. It wasn't that he had a bad education. But Nick took offense and ran with that. And I don't blame him. Like, I really don't blame him for taking offense to that, because in a way it's not really any of Tony Nadal's business. But as you know, Nick is out here on No Challenges Remaining podcast talking about it, talking a lot of shit like in the days before, after the draw came out, saying, I'm going to be ready for this match.
I'm so not interested in this. I'm so not interested.
Do you want to move on?
Because the parties involved, Nadal and Kyrgios, we know what they think. It's been crystal clear, based on what they said in press this week, their stances on each other. So that's that.
Yeah. Rafa really spoke to my spirit when he said, I'm too old for this. Like, I literally do not have an opinion on this drama ahead of the match. I feel that Rafa came with a very clear game plan, and he executed it well. Like, he's played Kyrgios at Wimbledon and lost before.
Incredible in this match. After they split the first 2 sets, Nadal finishes him off in 4 by winning the first 2 tiebreaks he's ever won against Kyrgios in their head-to-head career. Previously, Nick had won all 5.
Oh. And both were won with an early mini break from Rafa.
And especially in the 4th set, Kyrgios had a few, shall we say, mental lapses and gifted a couple of those points.
Right. Nadal actually had a mental lapse in the 2nd set, I would say. And he admitted that in press, that he found himself distracted. Nick was complaining about Rafa taking too long between points, between serves. You know, a common complaint. But as soon as the match became more competitive and Nick was really in it, the chattering kind of stopped. And that's something maybe casual fans are into, but for me watching it, I was just like, can you just stop? Like, because sometimes you get the sense like it's hurting himself more than anyone else. Just this constant preoccupation, like the need to chatter at all times.
No, after the match in press, Rafa was asked about... This was such a weird question, because the dude is asking a question predicated on what his friend heard. So he goes, my friend who is Argentinian heard you say pendejo and hijo de puta, and before he could even finish...
A Spanish-speaking friend of mine said he was watching and he sort of lip-read you and thought you said pendejo and hijo de puta at one point.
Me?
Yeah. But what?
Sorry. False.
False. Okay, that's fine.
Pendejo is Argentinian. I am Spanish.
Yeah.
Hijo de puta, I never said
Okay.
at all.
Okay. But
So check the videos again before saying that.
Okay, no, this one.
Okay.
Well, that's why I brought it up.
False.
Unequivocally false.
I think Rafa is wrong about pendejo being an Argentinian slang word. Don't Mexicans use it? Like, constantly?
I've never been to Mexico.
it was
Don't
weird.
know any Mexicans.
But the question was so bizarre. And that sort of question was endemic. The press conference, I guess, was entertaining, but for me, as like a sort of stuck-up purist when it comes to journalism, I found it kind of distasteful.
It wasn't so much distasteful as it was sloppy and lazy.
It was. There were how many questions... Okay, so there's Rafa's press conference, but Nick's press conference...
Oh my God.
It was opened with, do you think you were hurt because you were at the pub the night before? And that was like the tenor of so many of the questions were about the drama. How many people asked Nick about his tactics, about the match itself? And he actually had good observations about Nadal's game plan that he shared unprompted. He wasn't actually asked a good question about it, but he came out with it anyway.
But to your point, when he was asked questions pertaining to tactics or something to do with the ins and outs of the match, he gave thoughtful responses. Mm-hmm. But when he did not like a question, when he felt it was salacious, he essentially clown question bro'd you.
Right.
Clown question bro.
Who was that?
Bryce Harper.
I mean, Nick likes it both ways, right? Like, he wants to be the Joker and wants to be a troll. In this sense, like in this situation, he lost. He was quite respectful to Rafa in press and wasn't in the mood to play the troll. But I was just disappointed and kind of grossed out by a lot of the questions that he was asked, by the fact that we're joking around about journalists taking selfies with him at the pub.
No, it was pointed out that it wasn't a selfie.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It was just
a picture.
Photo.
Is that journalism? No, I mean, all shade, all tea, but I am extremely judgmental about that kind of thing. Are you a journalist or are you a friend?
Well, the issue here is that right as Nick was being asked a question, he's like, you were at the pub last night. Mm-hmm. And then like, cackle, cackle, laugh, laugh. And then I'm thinking, well, if I'm that journalist, I'm running for the hills. I'm like, I don't want to be identified.
Yeah.
But that said, quote unquote journalist then posted the picture of Kyrgios kissing her on the cheek. from the night before. So
You
that
know,
was one way to do it. That was a choice.
Some members of the press have to obey different rules than others. That might get your press pass snatched at a smaller tournament. Anyway, I'm a party pooper. I know. I get it.
Miss Parmentier, she caused a bit of kerfuffle this week when she danced on Sharapova's grave.
It wasn't quite a sea walk. It was a moonwalk. Okay. Maria Sharapova, there were a few things going on here. Sharapova had to retire from the match. She happened to retire at 5-love in the third set. So there was already a lot of criticism about why would you retire at that point. You could have just served or whatever. You could have just walked back and forth and taken your beating. I didn't really see the end of that match, so I'm not going to comment on it. But someone did point out that other players, when they're hurt, have just stayed on court, taken their whooping, and gone home. I don't think you have to, but I do question retiring at 5-love. Unless it was like an extreme acute injury that
If you were
popped up.
extremely injured.
Yeah, that was shade. From you.
From me?
Yes. Because Sharapova said that about someone else.
You said extreme. You were saying extreme.
Yes,
You're
but
going that direction.
That's a famous quote.
I was just trying to be more succinct.
Okay. So Sharapova retired. Typically, the opponent is quite respectful of a retirement. Parmentier said, "My coach was promised that if I won, I would moonwalk on court. And I certainly did."
It wasn't even a big moonwalk.
No.
I just can't be that wound up by it. Except Miss Sharapova was directed to a video of it on Twitter and quote tweeted saying, I was just going to sit here eating my food.
I was going to go take a nap, but now I can't sleep.
So
Because
I'm going to be rehabbing furiously to get back.
I did try to put myself in the place of if this were Serena, if this were a player that I were a fan of and their opponent did that, how would I feel?
You'd be annoyed.
And I get it. I'm not trying to be a hypocrite here. I understand the double standard. But there was so much happening in the first week. Who can even dwell on it?
Mm-hmm. Is it potentially distasteful? Yeah. You're Parmentier. You're not the greatest player in the world.
But she's been out here forever.
For a long time.
She's been knowing Maria for probably 15 years.
Yeah. But you get your chance to play Sharapova and you get to take her out at Wimbledon in the second round. You get to collect third round prize money. This is not nothing for her.
Right.
She had this pre-arranged agreement with her coach, and that's probably why the dance was a little bit truncated. It wasn't a full-on moonwalk.
Had the match continued to 6-love and she had an actual winning moment, it wouldn't have been distasteful, right? We would see it differently. It's one of
those things where you could easily just say, yo, seriously, is that really that cute for you to do that? As opposed to die bitch die. We have to go from 2% to 200 in no time.
Yeah.
Some say 0 to 60. How did I come up with that?
I said you have a problem with metaphors.
I just struggle to be bothered by this whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Fabio Fognini in his match against Tennis Sandgren.
Lord.
By the way, we do have to blame Fabio for letting Tennis Sandgren win 3 matches in a row. Minimum 3 matches. He's in the round of 16 in Wimbledon. Will face Sam Querrey. Again, kind of a lesser of 2 evils there.
Well, there's definitely one bigger evil in that match.
That's true. But in the Fabio match, they were out on one of the smaller courts, and Fabio was annoyed about a lot of people wandering around, and it was just kind of noisy and chaotic. Definitely get the frustration there. He's sort of chattering to himself in Italian, talking about damned English. A bomb should explode on this court or on this club. And man, people are mad. And someone pointed out, of course, the umpire was Carlos Ramos, who is known to be an extreme... Have you heard of him? An extreme stickler for the rules. There are a lot of people out here who are in the Protect Carlos Ramos camp.
Yes. Mm-hmm. That also intersects with other camps that shall remain nameless.
Right. Okay, this might be an unpopular opinion, but I'm also struggling to get mad about this.
Yeah, same.
obviously,
I'm told, whenever somebody says, say, for example, a European goes and calls somebody the N-word. Like, well, in my country, the N-word, we use it to mean, like, painting the wall. It's totally different. There's always some kind of explanation for when a European says something that we in this side of the world finds,
right,
terrible and totally unpolitically correct, right? We always get explained what it really means.
Yes.
And so what we're told this time is that it's a very common thing to be saying in Italy, and it doesn't mean anything.
Right. I actually accept that in this situation.
I do, as well.
And I don't know, like, you might drag us for that, but I don't think it was a terrorist threat. I think that much is clear. It was certainly distasteful.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, as Ben Rothenberg pointed out, the All England club was actually bombed during the World War.
Yes, during the Blitz. It was weird. It was just weird. It was, Fabio has not grown up. Every time I criticize Fabio, people want to say, well, he has a kid now, so just need to understand he might be different.
He is a grade A all-time asshole. Like, we know this.
Right.
Like, we're not trying to diminish his status. He's earned it.
Yeah.
But, like, I understand his gripes in this instance. Mm-hmm. Like, he's won more matches than a lot of people on the ATP Tour in the last 12 months. I feel like he's earned a spot outside of court Timbuktu.
Maybe they were punishing tennis. Who knows?
Maybe. Oh, yeah. Before we get into this ATP mess, can we talk about how Stan Wawrinka is like a stone's throw away from posing for Playgirl?
I just tweeted about this.
Apparently
he has become an Instagram baddie.
Yeah, apparently he and Donna are through.
They are.
They're through, and he's out here soliciting phone numbers, posing up by the pool with Bubbly, like, shirtless everywhere, wanting you to count his abs.
I'm so ashamed.
Why?
Because I have always been attracted to him, and it's gross.
It's gross.
It's gross because I won't get into it, but
you're not opposed to this new era, is what you're saying.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. He's a guilty pleasure of mine.
It reads to me that he is trying to let Miss Vekic know what she's missing.
Oh, that's gross. That's really gross.
I mean, some might say, where it's welcome for you in the thirst department, some might find it a bit desperate, and it exists in truth somewhere in the middle.
Mm-hmm. Probably. And he is also like 35.
Yeah.
And has now become an Instagram thought in his mid-30s.
He's living his best life off the tennis court. Mm-hmm.
You know who's not living their best lives? The ATP Players Council. That shit has got to suck. Can you imagine being stuck in one of those 7-hour meetings?
Oh my God.
A 7-hour meeting the Friday before arguably the most important tournament of the year.
Mm-hmm. There's so much to unwrap here. There's so much we don't know. There's so much that's coming into focus as to why we don't know things. Mm-hmm. And it's as or even more salacious than we could have imagined.
It's also it's confusing. We know very little about the content, like what goes on at Players Council meetings. Some information is leaked. We don't know who's leaking it, but Novak Djokovic is annoyed that there's a leak on the council. We do know that 4 members resigned either possibly during or after the most recent Players Council meeting. Robin Haase was the first one to come out publicly and saying that he was leaving the council.
Valverdue left as he was the coaching representative. Yeah. Stakhovsky, who was just reappointed to fill in a vacated spot in January, I think he left. And Jamie Murray left as well. And they all pretty much say, like, this is not working, there's nothing that we can do.
Right. That they're kind of at an impasse. A few of them made some insinuations that certain people were not out for the best interests of all of the players. Mm-hmm. And what was confusing to me is that Stakhovsky was always assumed to be on the Djokovic anti-Kermode wing of the council. And he resigned. What
became a huge part of this story and where things started to unravel from the Djokovic side of the equation is when he was again blindsided in press by being asked about the situation. I guess he thought, I don't know what he thought.
But at this point, how are you blindsided?
How are
You're
you
not-
surprised that you are being asked about Gimelstob when you are meeting to fill his spot? That was one of the things on the agenda, and Wallace Simpson, he was the one...
Weller Evans.
Weller Evans was the one who was appointed as the interim board member through the end of the year over Nicholas Lepenti, right?
Yeah.
And interim because they couldn't come to a consensus. It was essentially the same split that they had in Australia, or sorry, in Indian Wells, which then they delayed the vote to Wimbledon. And he was asked about Gimelstob, and here at Wimbledon, after all that's transpired, after the victim statements have been part of public record for months, he has positive things to say about Justin Gimelstob, and then cops to having never read the victim statements.
It was a remarkable exchange, especially since this was available to everybody shortly after it happened. It's not happening behind closed doors. It's a press conference at a tournament that publishes the video of their conference soon after. Bill Simons from Inside Tennis was the journalist who was asking the questions. It was quite a long interaction.
Kudos to him. He said some messed up wild things in the past, written some wild things that are not okay.
A few like weird questions. I know we talked about one pertaining to Serena.
But in this instance, he did a good job.
Oh, he was prepared. He was calm. He asked the correct probing questions. It was just so strange coming from Djokovic because he made very clear that he felt attacked. And he said it seemed like he said out of nowhere, there is no reason for you to attack me. And that was in the midst of Simons explaining what a no contest plea means in California. And he wasn't saying like, oh, you're so stupid because you don't know what this means. We didn't know what that meant either. Like we had to do our research about that, and that's what Simons was saying.
But it's reasonable to get that question when you offer a somewhat blanket statement still in support of Gimelstob when all this stuff is available.
Right, because we've heard Novak said, it's still kind of winding its way through the courts, and I'll wait. And Kevin said something similar, that we just have to wait and see what happens. We have seen what happened.
By Kevin, you mean Kevin Anderson.
Yes.
It was very disappointing what Kevin Anderson said.
And I just wonder, what are you all waiting for? The criminal trial is... Well, it wasn't really a trial, but the criminal proceedings are done. They're over. The judge
Gimelstob pled no contest, which the judge went to great lengths for Gimelstob to agree and accept that was tantamount to a guilty plea.
Yes. That's on the record. You can look it up.
The judge went on to say, you cannot go forth and then represent this as something different, which Gimelstob continues to do at every turn.
Yeah.
And it's clear that that's what he's putting in these people's ear behind closed doors. And we got a letter from Justin Gimelstob's lawyer after that first press conference with Djokovic, essentially saying we're surprised that his name is being brought up still as part of this whole process. And it took steps to try and clear Gimelstob's name. It was bizarre.
It's strange because I thought the judge's instructions were very clear, and I would assume that a letter from a lawyer is seen legally as representing the defendant, right? Like, just because Gimelstob himself didn't say those words, it's representative of him.
Yeah. So, fine. I can see how somebody would say, well, the victim statements are just that. And we talked about this when this whole thing unfolded in real time, that those weren't vetted, cross-examined statements. It's when, the proceeding has been decided and the victim gets to say their piece. So there may be inaccuracies in that, but Gimelstob doesn't get to contest those now.
Well, he could have.
If he wanted to, he could have.
Had he chosen to go to trial.
Yeah. But he chose to plead no contest and to accept that he was guilty, in effect.
For me, I don't want to assume what Novak knows or doesn't know. If he says he hasn't read them or he hasn't heard the contents of the statements, I will take him at his word. What I have to object to is, well, after all this time, how do you not know? This is actually a friend of yours at this point, someone you speak to on the phone, you've heard his side of the story. How have you not done a quick Google? It's just...
I mean, not only that, it's been brought to
know.
his attention multiple times in press. I feel that he has a responsibility as the president of the Players' Council, a body which is voting to replace Gimelstob. It's part of due diligence to take 10 minutes and read this stuff.
Right.
Hell, listen to the Body Serve Tennis podcast. We'll help you out. But to get to this point now at Wimbledon, where it's supposed to be the wrapping up moment of this whole thing, and to still be in the dark about all these various parts of the situation, it's a dereliction of duty, and it was mind-blowing to me.
Right. And also, Gimelstob flew to London during this tournament. Of course, journalists are going to ask about it, or they should. They're not just all out here to take selfies with Nick Kyrgios. They are here to ask important questions. How are you not better prepared? And I think Novak is a really smart guy. Like, that's not the issue. He is super intelligent. So, my gut instinct is not to believe the claims of ignorance, because I know he's smart.
See, I don't know if I agree with that. I think that at every step of this situation, everybody involved seemed to be caught off guard that there was this much interest in what was going on, that it was still a thing, that it was something that they would be getting asked about. I think that a lot of these folks thought that it was done with.
Oh, yeah.
And that it wouldn't be brought up again.
Right. But you said, Gimelstob resigned from the board. He was going to take some time, but here he is.
I didn't say that. You said that.
No, but that's what they are saying.
Okay.
Right? We have dealt with the problem. That was the messaging from the ATP. And here he is. In what capacity, we don't know.
And the statements from Djokovic and Kevin Anderson read like PR fluff. Like trying to not deal with the actual question and just kind of like bat it away and think that was going to be enough. When in fact, the time for that was 6 months ago.
Right.
Like, that would have been okay 6 months ago. Like, we expect more now. And to then expect for a much maligned working tennis press to not tackle that issue is a bit... it's crazy.
Now, so the next thing that we have to talk about, and I want to make very clear that to avoid any legal problems for us, we're not making the connection here, but sports business, the publication Sports Business and the reporter Frank Dunn reports that the ATP World Tour is on the verge of signing this massive deal with IMG to sign away its betting, streaming, and data rights for $1 billion. The story explains that it was a no-bid contract, that they didn't seek out all the other company. I don't even know.
Or to see if they could get a better offer,
yes.
A better bid.
So it was a deal with IMG. They didn't accept any bids. It's for $1 billion, supposedly. And it is imminent, according to this story.
Justin Gimelstob, who is repped by IMG, who we learned earlier this year got Max Eisenbud into the tennis agency's business stream with IMG. Like, there's that long history of Gimelstob with IMG, and all these players are with IMG as well. Players on the board are with IMG.
Many players are with IMG. IMG also owns the Miami tournament. We've talked so much about conflicts of interest in tennis on this podcast, and it's important to remember that conflicts of interest in and of themselves are not necessarily corrupt, but they can create the conditions for corruption, and at the very least create the appearance. Right? So we're not saying that there is something untoward going on, because we don't know. We simply do not know what has happened.
But at the same time, we wondered why Gimelstob was so indispensable to the board and the council and to tennis for nobody to be talking up against him when this whole thing was going on. Where everybody was saying, well, let's wait and see. Just how intertwined was Gimelstob in the fabric of tennis. And we suspect now one of the ways was a potential part of this deal brokering through the agency that reps him and is so intimately involved with so many facets of the ATP Tour.
Right. And we understand that Gimelstob has a financial stake in the ATP itself. He owns a production company that does a lot of work for ATP Media. It's very intertwined. It's really difficult to do research on this sort of thing because ATP Media, for example, doesn't say, oh, here are the people who work here, or here are the partners, Like, you have to piece these things together like a puzzle. So there are like a bunch of big players, apparently, in the betting streaming arena, and one of these companies is currently preparing a formal complaint to the ATP on the grounds of a lack of competition. I don't know the competition laws and enforcement in the United States.
Or into what jurisdiction it would be.
Right. I know that in Canada, I could tell you some stories about the Competition Bureau objecting to certain deals and trades and all that sort of thing. In the US, I have no idea. Or France, or wherever they're suing or complaining. I think it is becoming very, very clear that Gimelstob is such an insidious part of tennis that he is not going anywhere. And this recession from the spotlight was always meant to be very, very temporary and possibly nominal. He may be working in some capacity behind the scenes.
The bottom line is, how can you look at this deal in light of everything that we've suspected or come to know or are skeptical about and not feel like it doesn't necessarily pass the sniff test? That there's something there that we are not being told about that might not be on the up and up completely.
Right. But at the same time, if you are a member of the Players' Council and the ATP is about to secure a $1 billion contract, and you feel that you could divert some of that revenue to players, I can understand how you would feel like, well, this is my role, right? I don't care how this deal came about. If I can get some of this money into prize money or to challengers or whatever, this is what we have to do. I get that. What was really surprising to me is that Vasek Pospisil tweeted about basically that he was disgusted by the deal, and this was the first that he'd heard of it.
Oh.
Which was even more confusing because, again, we're on the outside, we assume Vasek is on one side and other people are on the other.
And so this may be when
right?
somebody like Djokovic says in his defense all year, like, he doesn't like the leaks, there's so much going on that people don't know about. There may have been so much going on that even his colleagues on the council didn't know about. Right. So there really is probably a lot that we don't know about.
So it is dangerous to assume.
But continue following this story because it's not done yet and there's more to be seen and heard.
Mm-hmm. Okay, enough about ATP politics. There are a few odds and ends that we wanted to tie up. Moving on to more happy news. I wanted to talk about mixed doubles.
Okay.
We've got some GOATs playing mixed doubles. We have Serena announcing that she and Andy Murray were going to team up, which when I first heard it, I thought it was a joke. I couldn't believe it was real because it is so rare and unusual that you see a matchup of this stature. And it was just crazy to watch. I don't even have that much substantive to say about it. It
was just a lot of fun to watch.
I think we have to appreciate this moment. It's just crazy.
And then Venus Williams is out here trying to rehab Frances Tiafoe's image as a doubles player.
Yes. So some of y'all dragged Francis so badly during Hopman Cup because he wasn't maybe the best partner for Serena, but he held his own the other day. He did a good job. He made some important volleys. He played well.
He withstood a hit from Venus square in the back.
Oh my lord. She just whacked him with a forehand in the back. And it looked like those two were having fun. He played... It's just such a joy to watch. Probably not for doubles players who are relying on this for their livelihood, because they have to come up against people like Venus, Serena, and Andy in mixed doubles who are playing it for like a giggle. but
the as much fun as it is to watch Serena and Andy play, it's just so heartening to see the both of them healthy and fit on a tennis court again.
Seriously, I was trying to keep that in mind. And I wouldn't even have minded if they lost that match. But it was just so heartwarming to see them both back and having fun. I know we've talked about Serena has been out here, and it seems like kind of a slog for her. But back at Wimbledon...
No, this is what you've been talking about.
Well, I've been saying.
All you've been talking about was you want to see her happy on the court again.
Right.
And she
now
looks happier on the court.
It.
Yeah.
Supposedly her knee is not hurting her anymore. She's playing with someone who she respects very much and seems to like very much, and it's mutual.
So now that she's enjoying herself, you can sit there and eat your food.
Yes.
For at least 5 minutes.
Yeah. And it's so interesting to see her and Andy interact. Because, I don't know, like, the sport has brought them together, right? They're not people who would know each other any other way, but they have all these similarities. The way that they carry themselves on court, their temper, their, so much of their anger is both inward and outward, the way they project it. But Andy clearly respects her so much, and at some points is in awe of her, that she hit some returns against Andreas Mies, and you hear him say, wow, during a point. It was a really encouraging performance by both of them. But I think Serena was probably the best player on court that day in their first match.
She has progressed nicely in her singles. She had a bit of a struggle, especially in that second set in her first round match. Ended up losing the first set in her second round match against Kaja Juvan, an up-and-comer who is very talented. And Serena was able to right the ship in the second set and kind of sail smoothly toward the end of that match. And then had a solid win against Julia Gerges in the third round in straight sets.
Right. So I don't want to make any predictions going forward, but things are looking up for Serena. I think she looks physically more fit than she has in a long time.
She said, and Patrick said before the tournament, that she was pain-free. You didn't want to believe it. What we've seen on the actual court seems to support that. She gets Carlos Suarez Navarro next, and potentially Ash Barty in the quarterfinals. There was a bit of outrage over Serena, quote-unquote, not knowing that Barty was number one.
Some Australian outrage. In the same newspaper that published that hideous racist cartoon last September, Sam Groth wrote a column about how Serena is disrespectful, and it's just
It was so manufactured. It was wild. I could not believe it. Like, I didn't even want to pay it much attention because it was so dim and disingenuous and mean-spirited, and it's the Fox News of tennis coverage. Truly.
It really is.
It's fake news.
Do you know Serena? Like, first of all, she doesn't pay attention to tennis.
Right?
Also, she lies constantly. So she may have actually known Ash was number one, but she didn't say so in press. But then she went on to say she's the sweetest girl. Her technique is impeccable. Everybody likes her. Like, it's impossible not to feel happy for Ash. But Sam Groth wrote a column about how she said she didn't know who was number one.
Like the idea that just because she didn't know who was number one was disrespectful to Ash, even though Serena went on to compliment her in the next breath. Like, I don't understand how that makes sense. And like you said, if you know anything about Serena Williams, you know, and also Venus, they do not pay attention to what's going on.
Not at all.
Like, Serena is trying to fit in the Met Gala and a royal wedding and all these things, picking up awards within. It's almost as if tennis is is fit into her professional schedule.
Right.
And so she's not following the tour on a week-to-week basis. And it's entirely believable. The actual window between Ash becoming number one and Wimbledon is so small.
Mm-hmm.
She did not play a tournament in between. She did not go into press. She wouldn't have been made aware of it by being in press. I don't know. It was...
Where the respect factors in is that when Serena has to face Ash, which she has in the past, she knows what to expect. She comes prepared. She expects a tough match. Like, that is respect in tennis, right? It's not about knowing who is number one right now, because, as you said, they don't pay attention. I will say, like, to me, Sam Groth's obsession with Serena is very disturbing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to make it more than it is, but it actually scares me, and I would like to move on completely.
I would like to bring up this little tidbit regarding when you went off on Simona Halep.
I feel like that is a mischaracterization.
No, you went off, and I had to rein you back in and check you a little bit when she said that she was just having a chill year after her loss at Roland Garros. And you're like, come on, girl, like, are you out here? Are you a tennis player? Like, what the fuck?
I don't know if that's verbatim what I said, but I think you got the spirit.
So she followed up in Wimbledon, and she said, when I said it's a chill year, I didn't mean that. My English is not that great when I want to translate something from Romanian. I'm still working hard. I'm motivated. I want to win every match I play, but I want to be chill as a person more than last year. Very simple.
Okay.
Pretty much what I said.
Mea culpa.
And that is a victory I will accept.
Did you hear that? I said I was wrong.
I heard you.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. To finish the episode, let's just briefly recap the matchups that are left. There are 16 matches left in the singles draw. Obviously, the round of 16s, 8 men's matches, 8 women's matches. On the men's top half, Novak Djokovic plays Humbert in the round of 16. David Goffin. Go and watch the last 2 points of his third round match. Some of the best stuff you'll see all year. Goffin plays Verdasco. Then Guido Pella plays Milos Raonic, who, I mean, like moth to a flame, like white to rice. Milos Raonic on grass.
Watch out. Milos may fly through his draw and then lose meekly to Novak, so...
He could also be your finalist.
Okay.
Bautista Agut gets a continued resurgent Benoit pair.
Yeah.
In the bottom half, oh boy, this is a whopper, a doozy, one that, wow.
Yeah. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty. Sam Querrey versus Denis Sandgren.
Wow. What a moment.
What a moment. Nobody is watching that match.
Oh, there are lots of people watching that match. Where, what?
Nadal plays Souza, who took out Dan Evans yesterday. The only reason I know about this match and that it even happened is that ESPN was showing Evans Souza instead of Serena and Andy Murray mixed doubles, which is wild because they wanted people, I think, to buy ESPN Plus.
Nishikori plays Kukushkin and Matteo Berrettini plays Roger Federer.
Yeah, I think there's something there actually.
I do as well.
Berrettini might be a bit tired from his 5-set match against Diego Schwartzman, but he's young. He actually said in press that he feels he has the weapons to beat Roger Federer.
He's big. He plays like he's corn-fed. He's got a huge serve.
He's semolina fed. He's pasta fed.
Should it be a Federer-Nishikori quarterfinal? Federer leads 7-3 in the head-to-head. Right now we're in course for another Fedal semifinal at a slam after the two played at the French Open.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's still a lot of ifs there, but...
Okay. Nadal, for his part, he looks good. I mean, Querrey could be a bother, frankly, with the big serve on grass.
There's been so much chatter about the speed of the surface this year that, it's like clay, and I feel like we hear that every year. And a lot of the players are very dramatic about it, and I think...
I believe it.
Well, I think players are sometimes, ironically, not the best judge of the quickness of a surface.
Listen, if Sloane Stephens...
you hear totally different stories from different players.
I see what I see on the TV. I see 30-shot rallies, which should not be happening on grass. I see the courts becoming brown on day 2 and 3. That
But
isn't.
I don't think
no,
that's unusual.
it is the rapidity with which it's weathering or wearing is not normal.
But Chris Everett said, regardless of the speed, the bounce is still very low,
Sure.
which makes it quite different from clay.
Yes.
And there's also a misrepresentation about Nadal's chances that he doesn't like fast courts, and I don't think that's true.
I think he likes a fast hard court. I don't think he likes a fast grass court.
I think the opposite.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. Like he's excelled on fast grass courts before.
Okay.
All right.
I'm just saying this court is not fast. If Sloane Stephens is out here saying, I love it, I love it, I love it, that should tell you something.
Okay, maybe it's not Mark Philippoussis fast.
Oh my God. Like, I grew up watching grass court tennis in the 90s, okay? Like, this is not that.
But nobody wants that. If it were that fast, people would be complaining.
A lot of people want that.
But no. Until randos win Wimbledon, and then they're going to complain. If Sam Querrey wins Wimbledon, do you think everyone's going to be happy?
There has to be some middle ground.
Yes.
Any predictions you want to make from that? I had before the tournament Federer over Felix in the final, so what do I know? On the women's side, on that top half, Ash Barty plays Miss Grass Court, Alison Risk.
Right. She beat Belinda Bencic.
Serena plays Carla Suarez Navarro. Streetsova plays Mertens, the player who is perpetually under the radar. And then the big boom fourth round match in the entire thing, for me, is Konta against Kvitova.
Yeah.
Konta taking out Sloane Stephens for the 4th consecutive time this year on 3 surfaces.
God, that is just...
On hard courts in
it's a
Brisbane,
matchup
on
nightmare.
clay at the French Open, correct? I believe at the French Open, and then one of the lead-up events, and then now on grass at Wimbledon. And Sloane had her for a while, through a set and a half, and Konta played flawless tennis the rest of the way to win. I mean, Joe Konta's resurgence is real at this point.
Yeah. Konta's going to be on center court against Kvitova. There were so many question marks about Petra before this tournament started, but she has made it through pretty uneventfully. But a lot of people are calling Konta to win.
Svitolina plays Martic, who is now having consistent results wherever she goes, Petra Martic. You know, we talked about how she suffered that heartbreaking loss to Vondrousova at the French Open. And here she is in the round of 16 at the following tournament on a different surface. One of my faves, Mohova, she is in the 4th round to play Karolina Pliskova.
Mm-hmm. Karolina, I am not inspirational Pliskova.
No, she's not here to do anything but secure her bag.
I mean, was anyone really asking for inspiration? We should probably move on.
Simona Halep plays Coco Gauff. Now, to my mind, for the folks who are wrapped up in the story, for the folks who want to see that Cinderella run go further, I kind of want it to end here because I don't want it to get too big.
I know.
For her.
I actually
I think this is a nice, cute
way.
spot for her to be competitive and lose. Keep your cash, keep your mentions on socials, and keep the pressure at a respectable level.
Yeah. Let her develop her game on her own.
And then Zhang plays Yastremska.
Mm-hmm. Out of the bottom half, Pliskova, this is a golden opportunity for Pliskova to get to the final and possibly win the tournament. So I think that, really, at her level and the season she's had, anything less than the final is a disappointment.
Keep in mind, Pliskova is somebody who had a lot of success at the lead-up tournaments to Wimbledon in years past.
Yeah.
Her game fits the surface, and she's been successful on the surface before. I honestly think the winner of this tournament comes from that very top section between Barty and Serena. That's what I think happens.
All right.
On that note, thanks for listening.
We're on Spotify now, as you said before. I have finally started using Spotify, and I saw us. I saw a tennis podcast, and I saw us in there.
Oh.
It was pretty cool.
That's how it works.
I'm still figuring out how to use it, but find us on Spotify.
It's not like they selected us to be part of Spotify. I submitted the podcast to Spotify.
We were nominated to Spotify. Apple Podcasts, iTunes, etc. All your podcast apps.
We know that the audio quality of the last episode was a bit harsh. on your ears in spots.
We do. But, you know, this is a DIY podcast where we're juggling our full-time jobs.
We're juggling
and our lives.
or individual jobs that do not have the same schedule.
Well, yeah,
There's
that's
that,
the thing.
and we have to have a personal life, and it was what it was.
So we appreciate everyone who did make it through that episode
And
because
who gave us constructive feedback.
don't put that in the review though.
My name is Jonathan. You can find me on Twitter at tennis_John.
And I'm James at ElliotJMR.
2 L's, 2 T's. The podcast is on Twitter at The Body Serve, as well as on Instagram. Hit us up with a review. Listen to us on Spotify. Enjoy week 2 of Wimbledon. Till next time.
Thank you very much.